Hello, friends. Welcome to part 2 of the book summary on The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Martin Comer. We already covered part 1, identifying the problem, so if you haven't seen that video, go ahead and watch that first so this all makes sense in chronology. In part 2, we're going to be moving from the problem which we identified as hurry sickness in our lives and moving towards the solution. So let's go ahead and dive into that. The first main idea in part 1 is titled, Hint, the solution is not more time. The solution to an overbusy and overhurried life is not more time. It's to reorganize our life and reprioritize our life around the things that really matter, and to simplify it and slow things down. My second main point that I'm taking from this chapter is when he starts to talk about living into both our potential, but more importantly, our limitations as well. And we all know that we live in a time where becoming your best self is a main priority, and I and the author both make a point in saying, hey, that's a very amazing thing, that's a good thing that you should strive after, but one of the things we don't ever really talk about is our limitations. Here's a quotation directly from the book. We live in a culture that wants to transgress all limitations, not accept them, to cheat time and space, to be like God, to watch every new film, listen to every podcast, read every new book, and don't forget the classics, hear every record, go to every concert, drive every road trip, travel to every country, another stamp for the passport, yes please. Eat at every new restaurant, party at every new bar opening, befriend every new face, fix every problem in society, rise to the top of every field, win every award, make every list of who's who, YOLO, FOMO, I'm so stressed that I can't breathe. Then he goes into talking about, well, just pause after that. In reading that, in hearing that, whoa, right? So fast, so hurried. That's exactly what we're moving away from. So it's good to identify the problem. And now let's go ahead and talk even more about limitations. One of the limitations that I experience in my own life is hearing about these great people in history, Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas. These are like big name philosophers and people that had a really great impact in the world, and to see that, you know, a story about Thomas Aquinas, that he used to dictate several books at one time. He would have scribes, like 5 different scribes pointed up, and he'd be working on ethics, aesthetics, philosophy, theology, all at the same time, and just dictating it to each of the people. And when I first heard that story, I was like, wow, I could never do that. We have limitations, IQ, intelligence, and photographic memory. I hear so many stories, and I'm sure you've heard stories or seen shows where someone has a photographic memory, and like a CSI show. It's crazy. I don't have that, and so I can never do those things that Thomas Aquinas did, or at least to the way that he did it, or other people that have photographic memories that can see something once and just remember it for the rest of their lives. That's a significant limitation. And one thing to remember in this is comparison doesn't it just eat away at our joy. The author makes a point of this too. If we compare ourselves to the highest people with different limitations and different IQs and different capacities and different giftings than us, it'll just eat away at our joy, I tell you. And you know. And so I give you permission, the author gives you permission to accept your limitations, that you don't have to be the best. You don't have to be the next, whoever that is for you. Another limitation we face is our season of life. Some of us, I'm not, but some people are married. Some people are in school, which I am. When you're in school, oftentimes it can be difficult to do all the things that you want to do because you do have other things on your schedule. Let's say you have a job and you're going to school full time. Well, quite clearly, you are limited because of the season of your life. And that's not a bad thing. People that are married and have kids, their kids are limitations to an extent, and that's not a bad thing at all. It's just how it is in the season of life that they're in. So all that to say, here's a quote that will help you understand exactly what I was trying to explain in that last one. And it's by Peter Scazzaro, and it says, "We find God's will for our lives and our limitations." Once again, because we're not God, because we can't be in 2 places at once, everything that we say yes to is 50 no's to other things that we couldn't have done. Anytime we take up a new hobby, we're saying no to 50 other hobbies, and that's just because we are human and we are finite, and that's just something we have to accept. it makes sense that we're trying to keep up with life at the pace of our technology because we're integrating with it, but you're a human, and that's okay. Accept your limitations, slow down, take a breath. It's okay. So here's one more quote from the book to finish us out on this section. Do you ever catch yourself with a sneaking suspicion that you'll wake up on your deathbed with this nagging sense that somehow, in all the hurry and business and frenetic activity, you missed the most important things? Somehow you started a business but ended a marriage. You got your kids to their dream college, but you never taught them the way of Jesus. You got letters after your name but learned the hard way that intelligence is not the same as wisdom. You made a lot of money but never grew rich in the things that matter most, which, ironically, aren't things at all. You watched all 14 seasons of, but never learned to love prayer. So, how do we slow down and rearrange our life and simplify our life in a way that'll fight against the chaos that we're living in, the hurried chaos that we're living in? The answer, as I and the author both agree on, is to follow Jesus. So before we move into section 2, I'd be curious, if you're comfortable in the comment section, why don't you write down, if you want to share, some of the limitations you feel in your own life. What do you feel like some of the limitations are? I already shared with you what mine are. And so what are yours? Do you find any relief also in just hearing everything that I had to say and giving you, permission to not have to be the best of the best and compare yourself to people that we see on social media? Do you find any relief in that? Alright, let's move to section 2. Section 2 of part 2 is titled The Secret of the Easy Yoke. Jesus was, in his day, a rabbi. I believe that he was much more than that. The author also believes he was Messiah. He was the full embodiment of God on earth, who paid the price for the brokenness that we had with God the Father and made a way for us to enter back into reconciliation, restoration, and unity with him. But if you were living in this time of Jesus, you would see him as a rabbi. So Jesus as rabbi had two things that every rabbi had. One was a yoke, not a literal yoke because he was a teacher, not a farmer. Once again, a yoke is something, if you've ever seen a picture, I'll put a picture over here, but if it keeps two cattle together and walking in the same direction. You can yoke cattle together and then we'll move in the same direction. Another idiom for a yoke in his day was the way that a teacher interpreted the Torah. You could say the way that Jesus was teaching about how to handle the things in life. That was Jesus's yoke, and it wasn't that, the fact that Jesus had a yoke that made him unique. It was that his yoke was easy. And the second thing that rabbis had in this day was apprentices, people that followed them. And so Jesus's invitation to others, his call to apprenticeship, was that if they would follow him, they would experience life to the full. And this model set out was to be with Jesus and become like Jesus and eventually do the things that he would do if he were you. So as we talk about apprenticing under Jesus, I'm going to go ahead and read you his invitation that he gave to anyone that wanted to follow him, including you. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That is the invitation that Jesus gave. I'm going to read it from a more modern translation that tries to paraphrase in our modern language by Eugene Peterson. But it's the same invitation. Here we go. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. That's the invitation that Jesus offers to anyone who wants to follow him. Because, as I truly, deeply believe, and have a warranted true belief for, that Jesus did rise from the dead, and he is the Messiah that was expected to come to restore our connection and to restore our humanity and show us how to enter back in from our fall into the life that we all yearn for and that we all seek for. This is the invitation to you. If you're weary and you're burdened and burned out on religion and burned out on self-help books and burned out on fad diets, burned out on addictions, burned out on trying to go to that one person to fulfill you, burned out with life, follow Jesus, yoke yourself to him. This is the solution that we're going for. This is the solution that we're looking for, that we've always ached for, that we've looked for in other places. And the invitation is to you. And one of the things the author says is that if you want the life of Jesus, the connection with the Father, the unhurried pace, the slowness, the presentness of the moment, then you have to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. He goes on to say, it's often quoted that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But that's exactly what we do. We get a vision of the kind of life that is possible with Jesus. We go to church or read a book or listen to a podcast. We catch a glimpse of the kind of life we ache for. One emotionally healthy and spiritual life. Our gut immediately says, yes, 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 God, I want that life. We head home from church with all the willpower we can muster and set out to change. But then we go right back to living the exact same lifestyle and nothing changes. It's the same cycle on repeat. Stress, tiredness, distraction. We feel stuck yet again, and then we wonder, what am I missing? An easy life is not possible, but an easy yoke is. And so the invitation is yours. If you want to accept this easy yoke, you can accept it freely, thankfully, because anything that you could have done by your own works was already paid for, because it was never going to be enough. You were always going to fall short. So thankfully, we have a God that truly exists, that extended his hand and said, I want to help you. I will do what you can't do. And I want you so bad that I'm going to come and make the bridge and build it for you. I wanted this bridge to be halfway. I wanted us to be able to meet each other, but all throughout history, you weren't able to build your half of the bridge. And so I'm going to come and build the full bridge for you and invite you in by showing initially this first act of love, which is giving my son, which is coming myself, and building the bridge for you to come back so that you can experience this life, the life of the easy yoke. And so that is section 2 of part 2. One more section. Here we go. Section 3 is what we're talking about is really a rule of life. So here's some of the funny things that the author led with in this chapter. He says, if there's anything you pick up from reading the 4 Gospels, it's that Jesus was rarely in a hurry. Can you imagine a stressed out Jesus snapping at Mary Magdalene after a long day? I can't believe you dropped the hummus. Sighing and saying to himself, I seriously need a glass of wine. Can you picture him talking to you, half texting on his iPhone with a sporadic and punctuating a one-sided conversation? Can you hear him saying, I'm sorry, I'd love to heal your leg, but I have a plane to catch. I'm speaking at TEDx in Jerusalem tomorrow. Here's Thaddeus, an apprentice of mine that nobody's ever heard of. He's happy to pray for you. I'm out. Or talk to my assistant Judas. We'll see if we can squeeze you in. Or, what magazine are you with? You say, none. His eyes glaze over with, So, the reason that all those stories were so funny, and I think that they were so funny, but it's because that's just not who Jesus was to anybody who's ever read the Gospels. Jesus was fiercely present to the moment and always working out of a place of connectedness to God. And this is not because he lived in like a pre-Wi-Fi time or anything like that. It was because of his lifestyle, the lifestyle that he lived. Here's a quote from the book on the lifestyle of Jesus. It said, he lived freely and lightly, free of all the discontent and distraction that comes from too much money and stuff that we don't need. Oof, I feel that. We could go on, but my point is simple. He put on display an unhurried life, where space for God and love for people were the top priorities. And because he said yes to the Father and his kingdom, he constantly said no to countless other invitations. Then he turned around and said, follow me. We should align our schedule the way that Jesus did with the priorities that Jesus had in order to experience the Jesus life. Boom. End of section 3. There's another part called the intermission. Wait, what are the spiritual disciplines? All in all, short summary, spiritual disciplines are Jesus' practices in life. If you read an autobiography, you usually do it so that you can emulate someone in life. Let's say you want to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're going to read about his life and do the things that he did so that you can become like him. Read about his practices, his habits. Spiritual disciplines are like that, but they help you enter in not just to your own willpower, but because they're spiritual disciplines, they connect you with the power of God as well. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in the next video. So that's it. That's where we're at for today. And so who's ready to accept an invitation? If you are, go ahead and comment that down below. Maybe encourage someone else that said yes as well. If you're already on that path, engage with each other, talk with each other. Y'all are humans. I know we're on the internet, but converse, engage, good things. I talk about this stuff as well on my Instagram and my TikTok, which admittingly is hard to do. I know people like to post every day, but I just can't do that. But when I do make posts, I make them with care, and I make them with the intention for you and for me. So if you want to, go ahead and follow me on Instagram and TikTok to see similar stuff like that during the week. Shorter, admittingly, like 1 minute versions of little snippets. But you can only say so much in 1 minute, truly. You can go ahead and follow me on social media, though, to connect with me, talk with me, DM, whatever. Be mutually encouraged. All right, part 3. Looking forward to it. After that, you're going to be fully equipped to live in an unhurried life. You'll have all the information you need, and you'll just need to put it into practice. So, part 3 coming soon.